Get back in your chair." Richard Blake's fist connected with Sarah's face, sending her sprawling across the marble floor. She'd tried to stand just once, just to prove she still could, and he'd caught her. "You want to walk?" He kicked her wheelchair across the room. "Then crawl for it." She crawled. Blood dripping from her split lip, tears streaming down her cheeks, the former Olympic gymnast crawled across the floor of the penthouse prison she'd called home for 3 years. He watched her sipping champagne, smiling. 200 feet below a Navy SEAL and his dog heard her scream. Everything was about to change. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments. We want to see how far this story reaches. And if this tale of survival touches your heart, please subscribe and stay until the very end. What happens next will change everything you believe about hope. Sarah Mitchell woke at exactly 6 in the morning. Not by choice. Never by choice. By conditioning. Richard's alarm. Richard's schedule. Richard's rules. She lay perfectly still, listening to him breathe beside her, counting his exhales, waiting for the moment he would rise and she could finally move without fear. 3 years. 3 years since the accident that stole her legs. 3 years since Richard Blake appeared at her hospital bedside like an angel of mercy. 3 years since she learned that angels could have the faces of devils. The alarm cut through the silence. Richard stirred, stretched, threw back the Egyptian cotton sheets. "Coffee," he said without looking at her. 8 minutes. He disappeared into the bathroom. Sarah heard the shower start. 8 minutes. Not 10, not 7. 8. The time she had to transfer from the bed to her wheelchair, wheel herself to the kitchen, grind the beans he preferred, brew the coffee at exactly the temperature he demanded, and have it waiting on the counter when he emerged. If she was late, there would be consequences. There were always consequences. Sarah moved quickly, her arms the only strong part of her left, pulling her body to the edge of the bed. The transfer to the wheelchair was practiced efficient. She'd done it thousands of times. She wheeled through the penthouse, past the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked San Francisco Bay, past the artwork worth more than most people's houses, past the fresh flowers that were delivered daily because Richard demanded perfection in all things. A prison with a view. That's what she called it in her mind. Never out loud. Never where he might hear. The coffee was ready at 7 minutes and 43 seconds. Sarah positioned herself exactly where he expected, her hands folded in her lap, face composed into the expression of grateful devotion he required. Richard emerged in a cloud of expensive cologne and Italian tailoring. He picked up the coffee. Sipped. Considered. Acceptable. Sarah released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. However, he set down the cup. "I noticed something interesting this morning. When I woke at 5:30 to use the restroom, you were already awake, lying there with your eyes open, thinking." Sarah's blood went cold. "I wasn't—" "Don't lie to me." His voice was soft, gentle almost. That was when he was most dangerous. "What were you thinking about, Sarah?" "Nothing. I couldn't sleep. I was just—" "You were thinking about leaving." "No, I would never. I can always tell." He moved closer, looming over her wheelchair. "You get this look in your eyes, this little spark of defiance. Like somewhere inside that broken body, there's still a person who thinks she has choices. Richard, please. Let me be very clear." He crouched down, putting his face level with hers. "You have no choices. You have no options. You have no future except the one I provide. Do you understand?" Sarah nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Say it." "I understand." "Say all of it." She closed her eyes. "I have no choices. I have no options. I have no future except the one you provide." "Good girl." He patted her cheek, the same cheek he'd bruised 3 days ago. "Now, I have meetings until 7. The charity gala is tonight at my mother's estate. You will be ready at 5. You will wear the blue dress I selected. You will smile. You will be charming, and you will remember that every person in that room knows you would be nothing without me." He straightened, checked his watch, and walked toward the door. "Oh, and Sarah." She looked up. "If I hear you've been awake thinking again, we'll have a longer conversation. One you won't enjoy." The door closed behind him. Sarah sat frozen in her wheelchair for a full minute, listening to the echo of his footsteps fade. Only when she heard the private elevator descend did she allow herself to breathe. She wheeled herself to the window and looked out at the city below. People walking, driving, living their lives. Free. She couldn't remember what freedom felt like. The woman in the reflection stared back at her hollow eyes, thinning hair, a face that used to grace magazine covers, now gaunt with fear and malnutrition. Richard controlled what she ate too. Everything had to be perfect. She had to be perfect. But she wasn't. She never would be. And that was the trap that kept closing tighter every day. Sarah Mitchell had once been somebody. Olympic gymnast. Bronze medalist at Rio. The girl who could fly. She closed her eyes and remembered. The roar of the crowd. The perfect dismount. Her parents in the stands crying with joy. The medal around her neck heavy with promise. That was 4 years ago. Another lifetime. The accident came 6 months after the Olympics. A rainy night on Highway 1 coming home from a sponsor dinner. A car appearing from nowhere, headlights blinding, forcing her off the road. The fall down the cliff, the crunch of metal. The moment she realized, she couldn't feel her legs. The police called it a hit and run. The driver was never found. 6 weeks later, her parents flying to California to care for her died when their small plane crashed in a storm over Nevada. In less than 2 months, Sarah lost everything. Her career, her mobility, her family. And then Richard appeared. He'd been a friend of her father's, a business associate. He came to the hospital with flowers and sympathy and an offer that seemed too good to be true. "Let me take care of you," he'd said. "Your father would have wanted someone to look after his little girl." She'd been drowning in grief and pain and medical bills. She said yes. By the time she understood what his care really meant, it was too late. The first time he hit her was 8 months after she moved into the penthouse. She'd dropped a glass in the kitchen, just a simple glass slipping from fingers weak with medication. It shattered on the marble floor. Richard's hand connected with her face before she even saw it coming. "Do you have any idea how much those glasses cost?" She was so shocked she couldn't speak. "Answer me." "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It was an accident." "Accidents are for careless people. Are you careless, Sarah?" "No. No, I'm not." "Then it won't happen again. Will it?" "No. Never. I promise." He'd calmed down then, bought her diamonds the next day, apologized with tears in his eyes, blamed stress, swore it would never happen again. It happened again, and again, and again. Until Sarah stopped counting the bruises and started counting the days, trying to find a moment, any moment, when escape might be possible. But there was never a moment. Richard had made sure of that. He controlled her money, what little she had left. He controlled her medical care. He controlled who she saw and when she saw them. Her grandmother Margaret had tried to intervene once. She'd shown up at the penthouse unannounced, seen the fear in Sarah's eyes, and confronted Richard directly. "What are you doing to my granddaughter?" Richard's smile had been ice. "I'm taking care of her, Mrs. Mitchell. Something her own family failed to do." "Sarah, tell me the truth. Is he hurting you?" Sarah had opened her mouth to scream, "Yes, yes, please help me, please get me out of here." And Richard's hand had found her shoulder, squeezing just hard enough to remind her what happened to people who spoke against him. "Grandma, I'm fine, really. Richard is wonderful to me." Margaret hadn't believed her. But there was nothing she could do. Richard had lawyers. Richard had connections. Richard had already laid the groundwork. "She's unstable," he told doctors behind closed doors. "Depressed. Possibly suicidal. The accident and losing her parents, it broke something in her. I'm just trying to keep her safe." He had paperwork, medical records that documented her erratic behavior. Testimony from therapists he'd paid to say whatever he wanted. If Sarah ever tried to leave, if she ever told the truth, he would have her committed. Lock her away in a psychiatric facility where no one would ever believe a word she said. She was trapped. Completely, utterly, hopelessly trapped. The phone rang, shattering Sarah's thoughts. She wheeled over to answer it. Only certain people had this number, all of them approved by Richard. "Mrs. Blake, this is Elena from your husband's office. Just confirming that the car will arrive at 5 o'clock for the gala tonight." "Yes, thank you." "Mr. Blake also wanted me to remind you about the dress code. He specifically requested the blue Valentino." "I remember." "Wonderful. Have a lovely day, Mrs. Blake." The line went dead. Mrs. Blake. She hated that name. Hated everything about the identity Richard had forced on her. But Sarah Mitchell was gone. Erased. Replaced by this hollow shell of a woman who existed only to please a monster. She spent the day, as she always did, imprisoned in luxury, surrounded by beauty she couldn't enjoy, counting the hours until her next performance as the dutiful wife. At 4:30, she began getting ready. The blue dress Richard had selected was beautiful, of course. Everything he chose for her was beautiful. It made her look like a porcelain doll, delicate, decorative, helpless. Which was exactly how he wanted her to appear. She was finishing her makeup when she heard the elevator. He was early. Sarah's hands began to shake. Richard was never early, unless something was wrong. The door opened. Richard stood there, but he wasn't alone. Beside him was a woman, young, beautiful, wearing a red dress that left little to the imagination and a necklace that looked exactly like the one Richard had given Sarah for their anniversary. "Sarah, darling." Richard's voice was silk over steel. "I'd like you to meet Vanessa. She'll be joining us at the gala tonight." Sarah stared at the woman, at the necklace, at the proprietary way Richard's hand rested on the small of her back. "How lovely to meet you," Sarah managed. "Vanessa is considering becoming a client of the firm," Richard said. "She's recently come into some money and needs guidance on how to invest it." Sarah recognized the script. She'd been a client once too. A vulnerable woman with money and no protection. She was watching her replacement being groomed. "I'm sure she's in excellent hands," Sarah said. Richard smiled. The smile that meant she would pay for that comment later. "Indeed she is. Now finish getting ready. We leave in 30 minutes. He led Vanessa to the bar, poured her champagne, treated her to the same charm he'd once shown Sarah. Sarah wheeled herself back to the bedroom and closed the door. She sat in front of the mirror, staring at the stranger looking back. This was it. This was her future. Watch Richard find someone new. Wait for him to dispose of her like he'd disposed of everything else inconvenient in his life. Her parents' faces flashed in her mind. The crash that killed them. The timing so convenient for Richard. The thought had haunted her for months. A suspicion too horrible to fully examine. What if the accident hadn't been an accident? What if Richard had planned it all? The car that ran her off the road. The plane that went down with her parents. The systematic destruction of everything she loved until she had no one left except him. It was insane. It couldn't be true. But the more she thought about it, the more the pieces fit together. "Sarah." Richard's voice cut through the door. "We're leaving in 20 minutes. Don't make me come in there." She wiped her eyes, fixed her makeup, composed her face into the mask she wore every day. Tonight she would smile. She would be charming. She would pretend. And tomorrow she would start looking for proof. The car took them south along the coast highway. Sarah sat in the back, her wheelchair folded, and stored her useless legs hidden beneath a cashmere blanket. Richard sat beside her, Vanessa on his other side, laughing at something he'd said. Sarah stared out the window at the ocean, vast and dark and endless. She used to love the water. Her parents had taken her to the beach every summer. She remembered learning to swim, her father's hands under her belly, his voice telling her to kick, kick, you can do it, baby girl. Tears pricked at her eyes. She blinked them back. The car turned onto a private drive. The Blake family estate loomed ahead, a sprawling Mediterranean mansion that had been in the family for 3 generations. Richard's mother, Helen, waited on the steps. She was 68, but looked 50, preserved by money and malice. She'd never liked Sarah, never bothered to hide it. "Darling?" Helen embraced Richard, ignoring Sarah entirely. "And who is this lovely creature, Vanessa Price? She's considering working with the firm." "How wonderful. Do come in, dear. Richard, help your wife with her chair. The caterers need supervision and I can't trust the staff with anything." Helen swept inside, Vanessa trailing behind her. Richard turned to Sarah. His face, hidden from the others, transformed into something cold. "Smile tonight. Perform. And when we get home, we're going to discuss that little comment you made about Vanessa being in good hands." He pulled her wheelchair from the trunk and unfolded it with practiced efficiency. The transfer from car to chair was rougher than necessary. "Now go make yourself useful. Find a corner and stay there until I need you." He walked away without looking back. Sarah sat in the darkness outside the glowing mansion, watching people arrive. Beautiful people. Rich people. People who had no idea what happened behind the closed doors of Richard Blake's penthouse. She wanted to scream. She wanted to roll down the driveway and never stop. She wanted to throw herself into the ocean and let the waves take her somewhere Richard could never follow. But she didn't. She wheeled herself inside and found her corner. The gala was torture. 3 hours of watching Richard charm donors, while Helen made pointed comments about Sarah's weight, her hair, her inability to provide grandchildren. "Of course the wheelchair makes these things difficult," Helen said to a group of society women, not bothering to lower her voice. "But there are options. Surrogacy, adoption. If Sarah truly wanted to give Richard an heir, she'd find a way." Sarah gripped the arms of her wheelchair until her knuckles went white. At 10 o'clock, she couldn't take any more. She wheeled herself toward the nearest exit, desperately seeking air. The back terrace was empty, dark, facing the cliffs that dropped down to the beach below. She positioned her chair at the railing and looked out at the stars. Somewhere down there she could hear waves crashing, the eternal rhythm of the ocean, indifferent to human suffering. Beautiful night. Sarah flinched. She hadn't heard anyone approach. A man stood at the edge of the terrace, partially hidden in shadow. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in casual clothes that looked out of place among the gala's designer gowns. "I'm sorry," Sarah said automatically. "This area is private. I'm not with the party." He moved closer, and she saw his face. Strong features, close-cropped, dark hair, eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "I live down on the beach, my grandmother's house. I was out walking and heard the music." "Oh." He gestured toward the railing beside her. "Mind if I stand here a minute? The view is better from this spot." Sarah should have said no, should have sent him away before Richard noticed she was talking to a stranger. But there was something in his voice, a weariness that matched her own, that made her hesitate. "Sure." He leaned against the railing, looking out at the ocean. Between them, sitting patiently in the darkness, was a dog. A large Belgian Malinois with intelligent eyes and a calm, watchful presence. "That's Atlas," the man said. "My service dog. He doesn't like parties either." "Service dog?" "I have PTSD. He helps." The simple honesty of it surprised her. Most people hid their weaknesses. This man offered his like it was nothing to be ashamed of. "I'm Derek," he said. "Sarah." "Nice to meet you, Sarah." He paused. "You look like someone who needs to escape." She almost laughed. "Is it that obvious?" "I'm trained to notice things. And you've been gripping that wheelchair like you're about to launch it off the cliff." Sarah looked down at her hands. He was right. Her knuckles were white, her fingers aching. "Rough night," she said. "I've had a few of those." They stood in silence for a moment. Atlas moved closer to Sarah, sniffing her hand gently. "He likes you," Derek said. "That's rare. He doesn't usually warm up to strangers." Sarah reached down to scratch behind the dog's ears. Atlas leaned into her touch, and something inside her cracked. "Good boy," she whispered. "Sarah." Richard's voice cut through the night like a blade. Sarah jerked back from the dog, her whole body going rigid. "There you are." Richard emerged onto the terrace, his smile perfect, his eyes deadly. "I've been looking everywhere for you, darling. Our car is waiting." His gaze found Derek, assessed him, dismissed him as unimportant. "Making friends." "This is Derek. He lives nearby. He was just... how nice." Richard's hand closed on Sarah's shoulder, squeezing. "But we really must be going. It's past your bedtime." He said it like she was a child, like she was property. Derek straightened. His eyes, which had been distant and tired, suddenly focused with an intensity that made Sarah's breath catch. "Sarah," Derek said quietly. "Are you okay?" "She's fine," Richard answered for her. "She gets tired easily. The wheelchair, you understand. It's exhausting for her." "I was asking Sarah." Something shifted in the air. Richard's smile remained, but his eyes went cold. "And I answered for her. As her husband, that's my right." Derek didn't respond. He simply looked at Sarah, really looked at her, and she felt seen for the first time in 3 years. "I'm fine," she said. The lie tasted like ash in her mouth. "It was nice meeting you, Derek." Richard pulled her wheelchair backward, away from the railing, away from Derek, away from the first person in years who had actually seen her. "Good night," Richard called over his shoulder. "Perhaps you should stick to your own neighborhood in the future." He wheeled Sarah inside through the gala, past the glittering guests who saw nothing wrong. In the car, his silence was suffocating. They were halfway home when he finally spoke. "Who was that man?" "I told you, Derek. He lives on the beach." "I don't care where he lives. I care why you were talking to him." "I wasn't. He just appeared. The dog." "The dog." Richard laughed. "You were petting a stranger's dog while your husband looked for you. Do you have any idea how that looked?" "I'm sorry." "You're always sorry, and it never changes anything." They pulled into the parking garage of the penthouse. Richard helped her into her wheelchair with rough, angry movements. In the elevator, he stood behind her hands, gripping the handles. "When we get upstairs," he said quietly, "we're going to have a conversation about boundaries, about loyalty, about what happens to wives who forget their place." The elevator doors opened. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it. "Richard, please, I didn't do anything wrong." "That's not for you to decide." He wheeled her into the penthouse toward the bedroom. "Please, I'm begging you. Whatever you're thinking." He stopped, spun her wheelchair around to face him. "You looked at him, Sarah. You looked at that stranger the way you used to look at me, before you understood what we are." "I didn't." "And then you let him touch you. His dog. His property. It was just a dog. Nothing is just anything." He grabbed the front of her dress and yanked her forward. She tumbled from the wheelchair, hitting the floor hard. "You want to crawl to strangers? Fine. Crawl." She tried to push herself up. He kicked the wheelchair across the room. "Richard." "I said crawl." She crawled. Across the marble floor toward the bedroom while he walked behind her, sipping champagne, commentating on her progress. "Faster. Your form is terrible. The great Olympic gymnast reduced to this. Pathetic." She reached the bedroom door. Her arms were shaking. Tears and blood dripped onto the floor. "Get up." "I can't." "Get up!" She grabbed the doorframe and pulled, every muscle screaming, her legs useless, dragging behind her. But she pulled, and somehow she stood. For one moment she was upright, defiant, alive. Then his fist connected with her face, and everything went dark. 200 feet below, Derek Harrison stopped running. He'd been trying to outpace the memories, Fallujah Martinez Chen, the blood on his hands that wouldn't wash off when Atlas went rigid beside him. The dog's ears swiveled toward the Blake estate above. A growl built in his chest. "What is it, boy?" Atlas didn't move, just stared up at the cliff at the penthouse gleaming in the darkness. Then Derek heard it. A crash, glass breaking, and a scream, high terrified, cut short. His training took over before his mind caught up. He was moving toward the cliff face, finding handholds climbing. Atlas barked once and followed a different path, finding the trail that wound up through the rocks. The woman from the terrace. Sarah. The look in her eyes when her husband appeared. The bruise she'd tried to hide with makeup. The way she'd flinched when he touched her. Derek had seen that look before. In villages overseas. In survivors of unspeakable things. He climbed faster. At the top, he found a service entrance to the building. Locked. He pulled out his pick-set old habits and was through in 30 seconds. Atlas appeared beside him, panting, hackles raised. "Find her," Derek whispered. The dog took off nose to the ground, moving through the building with purpose. They reached the penthouse level. Derek heard voices through the door. "Think you can look at another man? Think you can just—" A thud. A whimper. Derek didn't knock. The door exploded inward. Richard Blake stood over Sarah's crumpled body. His fist raised blood on his knuckles. He turned shock, transforming to fury. "Who the hell? Step away from her." Derek's voice was calm. Deadly calm. The voice he used when giving enemies one chance to surrender. "This is my home. My wife. Get out before I call the police." "Call them. Tell them what you were doing when I walked in." Richard's eyes darted to Sarah unconscious on the floor. Calculating. She fell. She's clumsy. The wheelchair. She fell. From her wheelchair, and somehow got a black eye and a split lip. "You don't know anything about our marriage." "I know what I heard. I know what I see." Derek moved forward, "And I know that if you take one more step toward her, you'll never walk again." Atlas positioned himself between Richard and Sarah, teeth bared, growling. Richard took a step back. "You're making a mistake. Do you have any idea who I am? One phone call and I can end you, your career, your life, everything." "I've been ended before. I'm still here." For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Then Richard smiled. That cold, calculating smile that meant he was already planning. "Fine. Take her. She's useless anyway. Broken and pathetic." He straightened his cuffs. "But this isn't over. She's my wife, my property, and I will get her back." Derek didn't respond. He moved to Sarah, checked her pulse steady, and carefully lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. Bones and fear, and 3 years of starvation. "Atlas, guard." The dog stayed between them and Richard, as Derek carried Sarah toward the door. "You'll regret this," Richard called after him. "Both of you." Derek paused at the threshold. "No," he said quietly. "You will." He carried her out into the night. Sarah woke to the sound of waves. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed beneath her was soft, but unfamiliar. The ceiling above her wasn't the pristine white of Richard's penthouse. And there was warmth pressed against her side, a weight that somehow felt protective rather than threatening. She turned her head and found herself face to face with a dog. Atlas. The memories crashed back. The terrace. Derek. Richard's fist. The darkness. She tried to sit up. Pain exploded through her ribs, her face, her entire body. "Easy." A woman's voice, gentle but firm. Sarah's eyes found the source, an elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes, standing in the doorway with a tray of what looked like tea. "You've got 3 cracked ribs, a concussion, and more bruises than I can count. You're not going anywhere fast." "Where am I?" "My house, down on the beach." The woman set the tray on a bedside table. "I'm Grace Harrison, Derek's grandmother. Derek, he carried you down a cliff in the middle of the night and showed up at my door looking like he'd seen a ghost." Grace sat on the edge of the bed, which in a way I suppose he had. Sarah's hand went to her face. She could feel the swelling, the split in her lip, the tender places where Richard's fingers had dug in. I need to go back. Absolutely not. You don't understand. Richard, he'll come looking for me. He'll hurt anyone who helps me. He has money connections. Honey, I was a nurse for 40 years. I've seen every kind of monster there is. Your husband doesn't scare me. He should. Sarah's voice broke. He should scare everyone. Atlas pressed closer to her side, whining softly. His nose nudged her hand until she rested it on his head. That dog hasn't left your side since Derek brought you in, Grace said. He knows something's wrong. Dogs always do. Where is Derek? Making phone calls. He has friends in useful places. Grace paused. He told me what happened, what he saw. Sarah, how long has your husband been hurting you? Sarah closed her eyes. 3 years. Oh, honey. I tried to leave, at the beginning. But he has lawyers, doctors, he's told everyone I'm mentally unstable, that the accident damaged my brain. If I try to run, he'll have me committed. He's shown me the paperwork. Grace's expression hardened. There is no paperwork in the world that justifies what I saw on your body last night. I documented every bruise, every cut, every injury. That's evidence. It won't matter. Richard owns judges. He owns police. He owns everyone. Not everyone. Derek's voice came from the doorway. He looked exhausted. His clothes rumpled, his eyes shadowed. Not me. Sarah stared at him, this stranger who had carried her out of hell. Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I know what I saw. That's enough. It's not. Richard will destroy you. Your career, your life. I don't have a career anymore, and my life stopped meaning much a long time ago. Derek moved into the room, crouching beside the bed so they were eye level. But this helping you, this matters. For the first time in months, something matters. Atlas's tail thumped against the mattress. He really does like you, Derek said. He hasn't taken to anyone like this since... He stopped. Since who? Since my teammates. The ones I lost. The weight of those words hung between them. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. So am I. For a lot of things. Derek stood. But right now I'm focused on keeping you alive. I've got a friend coming by later. Someone who might be able to help. What kind of friend? The kind who carries a badge. 2 hours later, Sarah met Detective Maria Santos. She was small, dark-haired, with sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. She walked into Grace's living room like she owned it, but there was no arrogance in her manner, only competence. Mrs. Blake, Maria said, taking a seat across from Sarah. I've been waiting 3 years to meet you. Sarah's blood went cold. What do you mean? I mean I've been investigating your husband since before you married him. Richard Blake is connected to at least 4 suspicious deaths, including, and I'm sorry to tell you this, your parents. The world tilted. What? The plane crash that killed them. We found evidence of sabotage. The mechanic who worked on the plane disappeared 2 days after the crash. His body was found in the bay 6 months later. Sarah couldn't breathe. And the car accident that paralyzed you, the hit and run. We traced the vehicle to a man who worked for Richard's company. He died in prison before he could testify. You're saying? I'm saying Richard Blake orchestrated the accident that broke your spine, and when your parents came to help you, he had them killed. Sarah's hands were shaking so hard she couldn't grip the arms of her wheelchair. Why? Your family trust. $50 million. With your parents dead and you incapacitated, Richard became the de facto controller of everything. I never... You didn't know. That's the point. He kept you isolated, dependent, afraid. Classic abuser tactics, but elevated to a whole different level. Derek stood by the window, his jaw tight. How do we stop him? That's the problem. Richard is careful. Every piece of evidence either disappears or gets discredited. Every witness either recants or dies. Maria leaned forward. But now we have Sarah. We have her testimony. We have documentation of her injuries. And we have something Richard doesn't know about. What? His mother. Maria pulled out a file. Helen Blake isn't just a society matriarch. She runs a criminal organization that's been operating for 30 years. Money laundering, fraud, witness tampering, and Richard is her enforcer. Sarah stared at the file like it was a bomb. Helen. But she's a monster in designer clothing, just like her son. Maria closed the file. We can bring them down, Sarah, both of them, but I need you to be very brave. What do you need me to do? Testify. On record. Everything Richard has done to you, everything you've witnessed, everything you suspect. He'll kill me. We'll protect you, like you protected your other witnesses. The question hung in the air. Maria didn't flinch. Those witnesses didn't have a Navy SEAL and a trained Belgian Malinois watching their backs. You do. Sarah looked at Derek. At Atlas pressed against her leg. At Grace standing in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed. I've spent 3 years being afraid, she said slowly. 3 years letting Richard convince me that I was nothing, that I deserved what he did to me, that no one would ever believe me or help me. She straightened in her wheelchair. I'm done being afraid. Maria smiled, the first genuine expression she'd shown since walking in. Good. Then let's get to work. They worked through the night. Sarah talked until her voice was raw. Every incident, every threat, every bruise she remembered. She talked about the isolation, the control, the way Richard had systematically cut her off from everyone who loved her. Maria recorded everything, documented, everything, built a case piece by piece. By dawn, they had enough for an arrest warrant. I can have officers at the penthouse by noon, Maria said. He'll lawyer up immediately. Let him. We have documentation of abuse. We have your testimony. And once he's in custody, his employees will start talking. They always do when they realize the ship is sinking. Grace brought more coffee, pressed a sandwich into Sarah's hands. Eat. Your skin and bones. Sarah realized she was starving. Richard rationed her food, controlled every calorie. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten until she was full. She ate. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel guilty about it. Derek had been quiet for hours, standing guard, watching, listening. Now he moved to sit beside her. How are you holding up? I don't know. Sarah set down the sandwich. I feel like I'm watching someone else's life. Like this can't really be happening. That's shock. It'll wear off. And then what? Then it'll hurt. A lot. But you'll get through it. How do you know? Derek was quiet for a moment. Because I've been there. After Fallujah, after I lost Martinez and Chen, I felt like I was watching my life through a window. Couldn't touch anything, couldn't feel anything. Just numb. What changed? He looked at Atlas, sleeping now at Sarah's feet. He did. Having something to take care of, something that depended on me, it forced me to keep going, to get out of bed, to remember that I was still alive for a reason. What reason? I didn't know. Until last night. He met her eyes. Maybe this. Maybe helping you. Before Sarah could respond, Grace's phone rang. The old woman answered, listened, and her face went pale. Derek, Maria, we have a problem. What is it? That was my neighbor. There are police cars outside the penthouse, but they're not there to arrest Richard. Maria grabbed her phone, dialed rapidly, listened. Her expression went dark. Richard filed a report. Kidnapping. He's claiming Derek abducted Sarah at gunpoint, that she's mentally unstable, and he's been trying to get her help. That's a lie. I know, but he has paperwork, medical evaluations, statements from doctors saying you're a danger to yourself. Derek was already on his feet. They'll come here. He knows his grandmother's address, everyone does. We need to move. To where? Maria thought fast. I have a safe house, off the books. It's not much, but it'll buy us time. Time for what? For me to get that warrant signed and turn this around. But Sarah, I need you to understand the next few hours are going to be dangerous. Richard is going to do everything he can to find you. And once he does, he'll kill me. He'll try. Sarah looked at Derek, at Atlas now awake and alert, at Grace already packing a bag. Then let's not let him find me. They left through the back door down a path that led to the beach. Maria's car was parked at a public access point, nondescript, untraceable. Sarah transferred to the back seat with Derek's help. Atlas jumped in beside her, settling with his head on her lap. I'll meet you at the safe house, Maria said. I need to make some calls, try to get ahead of whatever Richard is planning. Be careful. You too. Derek took the wheel. Grace sat in the passenger seat, her medical bag at her feet. They drove inland away from the coast, away from Richard's territory. Sarah watched the ocean disappear in the rearview mirror and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Fragile and uncertain, but there. Derek. Yeah. Thank you. For everything. You didn't have to. I know. Why did you? He was quiet for a long moment. Because when I saw you on that terrace, I recognized something. The look in your eyes. I've seen it in the mirror. The look of someone who's given up on being saved. Had you given up? Almost. Atlas saved me. The Navy gave me a mission, but Atlas gave me a reason to complete it. To come home. To keep breathing. And now I have another mission. Keep you alive. Help you get justice. Make sure Richard Blake pays for what he's done. Sarah reached out and touched his arm. I don't know if I can ever repay you. You don't have to. But just survive. That's the only payment I need. They drove in silence for a while. Atlas dozed against Sarah's side. Grace looked out the window, vigilant, despite her age. Then Derek's phone rang. He answered on speaker. Maria, what's happening? Richard is moving faster than I expected. He's got the chief of police on his side. Apparently they go way back. They're putting out a bolo on you, Derek. Armed and dangerous. Kidnapping charges. That's insane. It's Richard. He doesn't play by the rules. A pause. There's more. What? He's offering a reward. $500,000 for information leading to Sarah's recovery. He's framing himself as the desperate husband trying to save his mentally ill wife from a deranged veteran. Derek's hands tightened on the wheel. So the whole city is looking for us. The whole city is looking for you. Which is why you need to get to the safe house and stay there. I'm working on getting the warrant, but it's going to take time. How much time? I don't know. A few hours, maybe a day. We might not have a day. I know. Maria's voice was strained. Just stay hidden. Don't trust anyone. And Derek, don't let anything happen to her. I won't. He hung up. Grace turned in her seat. How bad is it? Bad. Richard is painting me as a kidnapper, and Sarah as a victim of mental illness. He's got the police, the media, everyone on his side. And we have Maria, Atlas, each other. Sarah felt the hope she'd been nursing begin to flicker. Maybe I should go back. What? If I go back, if I tell everyone I left voluntarily that I'm fine, he'll kill you. Maybe. But he won't hurt anyone else. He won't destroy your life, Derek. He won't come after your grandmother. Derek pulled the car to the side of the road and turned to face her. Listen to me. I have watched men die in my arms. I have held my teammates as the life drained out of them. I have carried guilt that I will never escape. His eyes were fierce, burning. But I will not carry the guilt of letting you go back to a man who has been killing you slowly for 3 years. I will not watch you surrender to a monster because you're afraid of what he might do to others. Derek, you matter, Sarah. Your life matters. Your safety matters. And I am not going to let you throw it away. Atlas barked once, as if in agreement. Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I don't know how to fight him. You don't have to. Not alone. Derek reached over and took her hand. We fight together. All of us. Grace leaned between the seats. Honey, I survived the Vietnam War. I buried a husband and raised a grandson who went off to fight his own wars. I have watched men like Richard Blake think they were untouchable, and I have watched them fall. She squeezed Sarah's shoulder. They always fall. And we're going to be there when Richard does. Sarah looked at these people, strangers really, who had become her protectors in the space of a single night. Okay, she whispered. Okay. We fight. Derek nodded. He put the car in gear and pulled back onto the road. They had just passed through a small town when Atlas suddenly went rigid. The dog's ears swiveled toward the back window. A growl built in his chest. Derek checked the mirror. We have a tail. Sarah twisted to look. A black SUV keeping distance but definitely following. How did they find us? Could be anything. Traffic cameras. Citizens with cell phones. Derek accelerated. Or Richard has more resources than we thought. The SUV matched his speed. Grace, there's a gun in the glove compartment. Take it. The old woman opened the glove box and pulled out a pistol with practiced ease. Still remember how to use one of these. I don't doubt it. Derek took a hard right onto a side road. The SUV followed. Sarah, get down. Atlas guard. The dog moved to position himself between Sarah and the rear window. Derek pushed the car faster, taking turns at dangerous speeds, trying to lose the tail. But the SUV stayed with them closer, now gaining. They're not trying to stop us, Grace observed. They're hurting us. Derek realized she was right. Every turn he took led them further from the main roads, deeper into isolation. Trap. Up ahead, another SUV appeared, blocking the road. Derek slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a stop. They were boxed in. Doors opened on both vehicles. Men emerged, 4, 5, 6 of them. Armed, professional. And standing behind them, stepping out of the lead SUV with a smile on his face, was Richard Blake. Sarah, darling, his voice carried across the distance. Time to come home. Derek's hand moved toward the gun at his hip. Don't. Richard's voice was calm, almost pleasant. My men have orders to shoot the old woman first, then the dog, then you. Sarah, they'll keep alive. She's still valuable to me. Grace's pistol was in her lap, hidden but ready. She met Derek's eyes in the rear-view mirror. Not yet, his look said. Wait. What do you want, Richard? Derek kept his voice level. I want my wife back. I want the man who stole her to face justice. And I want to go home and forget this unfortunate incident ever happened. Richard walked closer, his expensive shoes crunching on gravel. It's very simple, really. Sarah's not going anywhere with you. Sarah doesn't have a choice. Richard stopped 10 feet from the car. She never has. That's the beautiful thing about our arrangement. She depends on me for everything. Food, shelter, medical care. Without me, she's just a cripple in a wheelchair with nowhere to go. Atlas was growling, a low, continuous sound that vibrated through the car. Sarah. Richard's eyes found hers through the window. Come out. Now. If you cooperate, I'll let these people live. If you don't. He nodded to one of his men who raised a rifle toward Grace. 10 seconds. Sarah's hand found the door handle. No. Derek's voice was sharp. Don't. He'll kill her. He'll kill you. I'm already dead. Sarah met his eyes. I've been dead for 3 years. At least this way it means something. 5 seconds. Sarah opened the door. Sarah, no. She pushed herself out of the car, landing hard on the ground, her wheelchair still inside. She couldn't stand. Couldn't walk. She was completely helpless on the gravel. Richard laughed. Look at you. Crawling to me like you always do. He walked toward her, crouching down to her level. This is what I love about you, Sarah. You always choose correctly in the end. I'm not choosing you. I'm saving them. Same thing, isn't it? He reached out to touch her face. She flinched away. Now let's go home and... Atlas hit Richard like a missile. 90 pounds of trained Belgian Malinois slammed into Richard's chest, jaws finding his arm as he raised it to protect his face. Richard screamed a high, undignified sound and went down. Everything happened at once. Derek was out of the car, gun in hand, engaging the closest men. Shots rang out. One of Richard's guards dropped, then another. Grace emerged from the passenger side, her pistol cracking twice. A third guard went down. "Call them off!" Richard was shrieking, Atlas's teeth still locked on his arm. "Call them off or I'll—" "You'll what?" Derek stood over him, gun pointed at his head. "Kill me. You've been trying. My men. Your men are either down or running." Derek glanced around. 2 guards remained, but they'd lowered their weapons clearly, rethinking their loyalty. "Seems your money can't buy everything." Sarah had pulled herself to the side of the car, watching Richard writhe under Atlas's grip. For 3 years, this man had been her nightmare, her torturer, her god. Now he was bleeding in the dirt, crying for help that wasn't coming. Atlas, release. Derek's command was quiet. The dog let go, stepping back, but staying alert, ready to strike again. Richard clutched his mangled arm, blood seeping through his fingers. "You're dead," he gasped. "All of you. My mother will— Your mother is next." Maria Santos's voice cut through the chaos. She emerged from the trees with 6 federal agents. Weapons drawn, badges visible. "Richard Blake, you're under arrest for assault, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and conspiracy to commit murder." She nodded to her agents. "Get him up." They hauled Richard to his feet. He was pale, sweating, his perfect suit ruined. "This is a mistake. My lawyers—" "Your lawyers are currently being detained as well, along with your mother." Maria smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "The warrant came through 20 minutes ago. We've been watching this whole situation play out, waiting for you to incriminate yourself." Richard's face went white. This was a trap." "This was justice." Maria turned to Sarah, still on the ground beside the car. "Mrs. Blake, or should I say Ms. Mitchell, are you all right?" Sarah stared at Richard, at the man who had controlled every moment of her existence for 3 years. He looked small now, pathetic, just a bleeding man in a ruined suit. "I will be." Derek knelt beside her, carefully lifting her back into the car. "You were incredibly brave." "I was terrified." "That's what brave means." They watched as Maria's agents led Richard to a federal vehicle. He twisted around, catching Sarah's eyes one last time. "This isn't over," he shouted. "You think you've won? My mother will destroy you, all of you. She's more powerful than you can imagine." Maria slammed the car door, cutting off his threats. "He's right about one thing," she said, approaching Derek and Sarah. "Helen Blake is the real power. Richard is just her enforcer. If we don't move fast, she'll disappear with everything." "Then let's move fast." The federal safe house was a modest apartment in Oakland, deliberately anonymous. Sarah sat by the window, Atlas at her feet, watching the sunset over a city she'd never really seen. Richard had kept her isolated, controlled. She barely knew what the real world looked like anymore. Derek sat across from her, cleaning his gun, with practiced movements. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm dreaming." She turned from the window. "I keep expecting to wake up in the penthouse with Richard standing over me, telling me none of this was real." "It's real. Richard is in federal custody. His assets are frozen. His mother is being arrested as we speak." "And his victims?" "Maria is working on that. There are at least 4 women who came before you. 2 of them are dead, but the other 2, they disappeared. If we can find them, they can testify." Sarah thought about those women. The ones who had worn Richard's jewelry, lived in Richard's penthouse, believed Richard's lies. The ones who hadn't escaped. "I was going to be one of them," she said quietly. "The dead ones." But you're not. Only because of you. She looked at him, this stranger who had become her salvation. Why did you help me, Derek, really? It can't just be because you happened to hear me scream. Derek set down the gun. His hands stilled. When I was in Fallujah, we had a mission to protect a village from insurgent attacks. There was a woman there, Fatima. She had 2 children and a husband who beat her every night. We could hear it through the walls of the building we were using as a base. He paused, the memory clearly painful. I wanted to intervene. My CO said it wasn't our mission. We were there to protect the village from external threats, not internal ones. Our job was to observe and report, not to get involved in domestic matters. What happened? One night her husband killed her, beat her to death while we sat 50 yards away following orders. Derek's voice was hollow. I've killed men in combat. I've lost friends in ways that still wake me up at night. But that hearing her die and doing nothing, that's what I can't forgive myself for. Sarah reached out and took his hand. You saved me. I couldn't save Fatima. I couldn't save Martinez or Chen. But when I heard you scream... He squeezed her hand. I wasn't going to fail again. Atlas lifted his head, nudging Derek's knee. He knows when I'm spiraling, Derek said, managing a small smile. That's his job, keep me grounded. He's been doing the same for me. Dogs are smarter than we give them credit for. Sarah looked at the Belgian Malinois, this fierce, loyal creature who had taken down Richard Blake without hesitation. Can I ask you something? Anything. After this is over, after Richard and Helen are in prison and I'm free, what happens to us? Derek was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I'm not great at thinking about the future. The PTSD makes everything feel temporary, like I'm just waiting for the next disaster. I understand that. But, he continued, if you wanted to figure it out together, I wouldn't be opposed to that. Sarah felt something warm bloom in her chest. Hope. Real hope, not the desperate kind she'd been clinging to. I'd like that. The door opened. Maria entered, her expression grim. We have a problem. Derek was on his feet instantly. What happened? Helen Blake. She was arrested at her estate 2 hours ago, but she made bail before we could process her. Bail for conspiracy and murder. She has judges in her pocket, the same ones Richard used. Maria's jaw was tight. She's out. She's furious, and she's looking for Sarah. Then we move again. There's more. Maria hesitated. Helen made a statement to the press. She's claiming that Richard was the victim of a conspiracy, that Sarah orchestrated her own disappearance to frame him, and that you, Derek, are a mentally unstable veteran who kidnapped a vulnerable woman. That's insane. It doesn't matter if it's insane. It matters if people believe it. Maria pulled out her phone, showing them a news clip. This is running on every major network. On the screen, Helen Blake stood before a crowd of reporters, dabbing at dry eyes with a handkerchief. My son is a loving, devoted husband. Sarah is a deeply troubled woman who needs professional help, not criminal prosecution. We've tried for years to get her the treatment she needs, but she refuses. And now, with the help of a dangerous man who is clearly exploiting her vulnerability, she's trying to destroy our family. Sarah watched herself being erased, rewritten, transformed from victim to villain. People will believe her. Some will. Maria turned off the phone. But not everyone, and not the ones who matter. What do you mean? I mean, we have evidence. Real physical evidence that proves everything. The documentation of your injuries. The financial records showing how Richard controlled your money. The phone calls, the surveillance footage, the testimony of staff members who saw what happened behind closed doors. Is it enough? It will be, if you're willing to testify. Sarah looked at Derek, at Atlas, at the new life she was desperately trying to build. Helen will try to stop me. Yes. She might try to kill me. She will try, but we won't let her succeed. Sarah thought about the woman she used to be. The Olympic gymnast who flew through the air like she had wings. The daughter who made her parents proud. The person who had dreams and hopes and a future. Richard had taken all of that. Helen had helped him. Now it was time to take it back. I'll testify. Maria nodded. Good. We're scheduled for a preliminary hearing in 48 hours. Until then, you don't leave this apartment for any reason. What about Derek? He stays with you. Atlas, too. Maria glanced at the dog. Honestly, I'm not sure which one of them I trust more to keep you safe. Atlas wagged his tail. I'll have agents outside around the clock. We're also setting up a secure line so you can communicate with your grandmother, Grace. Sarah felt a pang of guilt. Is she safe? We moved her to a protected location. She's fine. Mad as hell about being sidelined, but fine. That sounds like Grandma, Derek said. Maria headed for the door. Get some rest, both of you. The next few days are going to be brutal. She left. Derek locked the door behind her, checked the windows, did a sweep of the apartment. Old habits. You should sleep, he said when he returned. I don't know if I can. Try. I'll keep watch. Sarah looked at the narrow bed in the corner of the room. She hadn't slept alone, truly alone, without fear of Richard appearing in 3 years. Would you? She hesitated. Would you stay close, just until I fall asleep? Of course. She transferred to the bed, her body aching from the day's events. Derek pulled a chair beside her, Atlas settling at the foot of the mattress. Derek. Yeah. Do you think we'll win? He was quiet for a moment. I think you've already won. You're alive. You're free. Richard is in jail. Everything else is just cleanup. Cleanup with a woman who orders murders. I've faced worse. Have you? No, he admitted. But I've never had more reason to fight. Sarah closed her eyes. For the first time in 3 years, she didn't dream of Richard. She dreamed of flying. The hearing was held in a federal courthouse downtown. Sarah sat in her wheelchair at the plaintiff's table, dressed in a simple navy suit that Maria had provided. Derek sat in the gallery behind her Atlas at his feet. The service dog had been granted special permission to attend unusual, but given the circumstances, the judge had allowed it. Helen Blake sat across the room surrounded by lawyers. She looked immaculate, designer dress, perfect makeup, an expression of wounded dignity. Sarah couldn't look at her without feeling sick. The prosecutor, a sharp-faced woman named Angela Torres, began her opening statement. Your Honor, we are here today to present evidence of a systematic pattern of abuse, false imprisonment, and conspiracy to commit murder. The defendant, Richard Blake, with the assistance of his mother, Helen Blake, orchestrated the deliberate maiming and imprisonment of Sarah Mitchell for the purpose of gaining control of her family's $50 million trust fund. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Furthermore, we will present evidence that the car accident that paralyzed Ms. Mitchell was not an accident at all, but a deliberate attack ordered by the defendants, and that the plane crash that killed Ms. Mitchell's parents, previously ruled as weather-related, was in fact an act of sabotage. Helen's lawyer was on his feet. Objection. These are outrageous accusations with no basis in fact. Overruled. The judge, an elderly woman with steel-gray hair, looked unimpressed. This is a preliminary hearing, Mr. Chambers. You'll have your chance to respond. Angela continued. We will present documentation of the abuse Ms. Mitchell suffered, photographs, medical records, testimony from witnesses. We will present financial records showing how her assets were systematically stolen. And we will call Ms. Mitchell herself to describe in her own words the hell she endured for 3 years. She turned to the judge. By the end of this hearing, Your Honor, we believe you will find sufficient cause to proceed to trial, and we will ask that Helen Blake's bail be revoked immediately. Noted. The judge looked at the defense table. Mr. Chambers, your opening statement. Helen's lawyer stood, an older man with the practiced charm of someone who'd made a career defending the indefensible. Your Honor, my clients are the victims here. Sarah Mitchell is a deeply troubled woman who has fabricated these accusations out of spite and mental instability. The man she's accused of kidnapping her, Derek Harrison, is a veteran suffering from severe PTSD who has demonstrated violent tendencies. Derek's jaw tightened, but he didn't react. We will present evidence that Ms. Mitchell has a history of erratic behavior, suicidal ideation, and false accusations. We will show that Richard Blake was a devoted husband who tried everything to help his wife, only to have her turn against him, with the aid of a dangerous stranger. He paused for effect. This is not a case of abuse. This is a case of manipulation. And when the truth comes out, my clients will be completely vindicated. The judge nodded. Prosecution, call your first witness. Angela stood. The prosecution calls Sarah Mitchell. Sarah wheeled herself to the witness stand, her heart pounding. She raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, and faced the courtroom. Ms. Mitchell, Angela began, can you describe your relationship with Richard Blake? Sarah took a breath, and she began to speak. She told them everything. The accident, the hospital, Richard appearing like a savior, the gradual tightening of control, the isolation, the manipulation, the first slap that opened the door to years of violence. She told them about the coffee, 8 minutes every morning, the consequences of being late. She told them about crawling, the humiliation Richard designed to break her spirit. She told them about the other women, the ones she'd seen at parties wearing jewelry that looked familiar, looking at Richard with eyes that showed the same fear she felt. When she finished, the courtroom was silent. Angela approached with photographs. Ms. Mitchell, can you identify these images? Sarah looked at the photos, her own body documented after Derek rescued her. Bruises, cuts, the map of 3 years of abuse. Those are my injuries, taken the night I escaped. And this? Angela held up a document. Can you identify this? Sarah looked at the paper and felt the blood drain from her face. That's Richard's handwriting. And what does it say? Sarah read the words aloud, her voice trembling. Phase 3 complete. Subject immobilized. Parents eliminated. Timeline accelerated. Full asset acquisition imminent. The courtroom erupted. Order. The judge banged her gavel. Mr. Chambers, control your client. But Helen Blake was already on her feet, her mask of composure shattered. Where did you get that? That document was destroyed. Angela smiled. Not completely, Mrs. Blake. Your son's housekeeper retrieved it from the trash 3 years ago. She's been keeping it safe, waiting for the right moment to come forward. Helen's face went white. That woman, she was supposed to be loyal. She was loyal to the truth, Mrs. Blake, and to the young woman your son was slowly killing. The judge looked at Helen with cold eyes. Mr. Chambers, I've heard enough. Helen Blake's bail is hereby revoked. She will be remanded to federal custody pending trial. Marshals moved toward Helen. You can't do this. Helen was screaming now, all pretense of dignity gone. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I can do? I know exactly what you can do, Mrs. Blake. The judge's voice was ice. And I'm making sure you never do it again. They led her away. Sarah sat in her wheelchair, watching the woman who had orchestrated her parents' murder being dragged from the courtroom in handcuffs. It wasn't over. There would be trials and testimony and months of legal proceedings. But in that moment, as Derek caught her eye from the gallery and Atlas wagged his tail, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Victory. The victory in the courtroom lasted exactly 17 hours. Sarah was asleep in the safe house when Derek's phone buzzed. He checked the message and his face went pale. Get up. What's wrong? Richard escaped. Sarah's blood turned to ice. That's impossible. He was in federal custody. Helen has people everywhere, guards, judges, marshals. Derek was already packing, shoving supplies into a bag. Maria just confirmed. 2 agents are dead. Richard disappeared an hour ago. Atlas was on his feet, sensing the tension, hackles raised. Where do we go? I don't know yet, but we can't stay here. Sarah's hands were shaking as she transferred to her wheelchair. 3 years of conditioning screamed at her, run, hide, disappear. But there was nowhere Richard couldn't find her. No place his money couldn't reach. He's coming for me. Not if I stop him first. Derek, you can't. I can. I will. He stopped packing, turning to face her. Sarah, I didn't survive Fallujah and losing my teammates and 2 years of PTSD to let one rich psychopath win. We fight. Together. All the way to the end. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Derek's hand shot out. Don't answer that. But Sarah already knew who it was. She could feel it in her bones. I have to. She pressed accept. Put it on speaker. Hello, Sarah. Richard's voice was calm, almost pleasant, as if nothing had happened. I hear you've been busy, testifying against me, showing the world our private business. A pause. That wasn't very loyal of you. Loyalty? Sarah's voice shook, but she forced the words out. You killed my parents. You paralyzed me. You tortured me for 3 years. I took care of you. I gave you everything. You gave me a prison. I gave you a life. Without me, you'd be nothing, a cripple begging on the streets. Richard's tone hardened. But you chose to betray me. You chose to side with that broken soldier and his mutt. Now you have to face the consequences. Derek grabbed the phone. Listen to me, you piece of... Ah, Derek Harrison, the hero. Richard laughed. I know all about you, the nightmares, the flashbacks, the guilt over your dead teammates. Does Sarah know you still wake up screaming their names? Derek's jaw clenched. What do you want, Richard? I want my wife back, and I want you to understand something very clearly. Richard's voice dropped to a whisper. I'm going to find you, both of you. And when I do, I'm going to make Sarah watch while I kill you slowly. Then I'm going to take her home and remind her what happens to wives who forget their place. You'll never touch her again. I always touch her, Derek. That's what you don't understand. Even when I'm not there, I'm in her head, in her nightmares, in every flinch and every fear. I own her. I always will. Sarah reached over and took the phone from Derek's hand. Richard? Silence. You're wrong. Am I? You owned me because I was broken and alone and had no one to help me. But I'm not alone anymore. I have Derek. I have Atlas. I have people who believe me, who fight for me, who see me as more than a possession. Her voice strengthened. You want to come for me? Come. But understand this, I'm not the woman you tortured for 3 years. I'm not going to crawl, I'm not going to beg, and when you find me, I'm going to be ready. She hung up. Derek stared at her. That was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Probably both. Sarah's hands were trembling, but her voice was steady. But I'm tired of running, tired of hiding. If Richard wants a fight, I'm going to give him one. Atlas barked once, as if in approval. Derek's phone buzzed. Maria. He's been tracked to a private airfield outside the city. We think he's planning to flee the country. Then we stop him. Derek, this isn't your fight. Yes, it is. He looked at Sarah. It's been my fight since the moment I heard her scream. They drove through the night. Maria had provided coordinates. The airfield was remote, used primarily by wealthy clients who valued discretion over legal oversight. The perfect place for Richard to disappear. How many men will he have? Sarah asked. Unknown. Could be 2, could be 20. Derek checked his weapons. But they'll be mercenaries, hired guns. They fight for money, not conviction. And you? I fight for something better. They parked a mile from the airfield and approached on foot. Derek carried Sarah on his back, her arms wrapped around his neck, while Atlas ranged ahead. This is insane, Sarah whispered. Probably. We're going to die. Possibly. You're not exactly reassuring. I'm not in the reassurance business. Derek set her down behind a cluster of bushes, giving her a clear view of the airfield. I'm in the saving lives business, and tonight we save yours. A small jet sat on the runway, lights on, engines warming. Figures moved around it, guards. Sarah counted 5. And standing near the stairs directing operations was Richard. He'd changed clothes since escaping custody. Now he wore dark tactical gear as if playing soldier. It would have been laughable if he wasn't so dangerous. I count 5 guards plus Richard, Derek murmured. Atlas and I can handle them, but I need you to stay here. What? No. Sarah. His hand found hers in the darkness. I know you want to fight. I know you're tired of being protected. But right now, the best thing you can do is stay alive. Let me end this. And if you don't come back... He was quiet for a moment. Then you run. You find Maria. You testify at the trial, and you make sure Richard and Helen rot in prison for the rest of their lives. Derek, promise me. Sarah looked at him. This man who had walked into her life and changed everything. Who had carried her out of hell. Who had given her hope when she thought she had none left. I promise. He kissed her forehead. Stay low, stay quiet, and whatever happens, don't come out. He moved into the darkness. Atlas followed. Sarah watched them go, her heart pounding. Please, she prayed. Please let them survive. Derek moved like a ghost. 12 years of SEAL training took over the muscle memory, the instincts, the cold calculation of combat. He circled the airfield, identified positions, planned his approach. Atlas stayed close, understanding the mission without being told. The first guard didn't see him coming. One moment he was standing watch. The next, he was unconscious on the ground, zip-tied and gagged. The second guard met the same fate. By the time Derek reached the third, word had spread. Shouts echoed across the airfield. Flashlights swept the darkness. Contact! We have contact! Derek took cover behind a fuel truck. Atlas pressed against his leg. Find Richard, he commanded quietly. Track. The dog moved, slipping through shadows, nose to the ground. Gunfire erupted. Bullets pinged off metal. Derek returned fire, dropping one guard, driving another behind cover. Then Atlas barked sharp, urgent. Derek followed the sound and found the dog at the base of the jet's stairs. Richard was halfway up, trying to reach the safety of the aircraft. Richard! Richard spun. His eyes found Derek in the darkness. You! He laughed, but there was fear beneath it. You should have stayed in your grandmother's cottage, soldier. This isn't your war. Every war against men like you is my war. Richard raised a pistol. Then die for it. He fired. Derek dove left. The bullet grazed his shoulder pain, but not incapacitating. He rolled, came up firing, and Richard ducked back into the doorway of the jet. You can't win, Richard shouted. I have money, resources, people all over the world. Even if you stop me tonight, I'll come back. I'll always come back. Not if you're dead. Derek advanced, Atlas covering his flank. The remaining guards had either fled or been neutralized. It was just him and Richard now. He reached the base of the stairs. Richard appeared in the doorway, Sarah in front of him. Derek's blood froze. Looking for someone. Sarah was gagged, her hands bound behind her back. Somehow, while Derek was fighting, Richard had circled around and grabbed her. Put down the gun, Richard said. Or I put a bullet in her spine. She's already paralyzed. I wonder what happens if I hit her higher up. Derek's finger tightened on the trigger. You won't. You need her. I need her money. The money is already secured in offshore accounts. She's just a loose end. Sarah's eyes met Derek's. She was terrified, but beneath the terror, he saw something else. Determination. She stomped hard on Richard's foot. The momentary distraction was all Derek needed. He fired. The bullet caught Richard in the shoulder, spinning him backward. Sarah fell forward off the stairs, and Derek caught her before she hit the ground. Richard screamed, clutching his wound, but still had his gun. He raised it. Atlas hit him from the side. 90 pounds of fury slammed into Richard's chest. The gun flew from his hand. Man and dog went down in a tangle of teeth and screams. "Atlas, hold!" The dog stopped, jaws locked on Richard's arm, keeping him pinned. Derek untied Sarah's gag, then her hands. "Are you okay?" "I thought you told me to stay hidden." "I did." "He found me. 2 men, they came from behind." "It's okay. It's over." Richard was whimpering on the ground, Atlas still pinning him down. "Please," he gasped. "Please call off the dog. I'll do anything. Anything." Derek stood over him. "Will you bring back Sarah's parents? Will you give her back the 3 years you stole? Will you undo every bruise, every scar, every nightmare?" It was business. I didn't mean." "You didn't mean to." Sarah wheeled herself to the base of the stairs, looking down at the man who had destroyed her life. "You orchestrated a car accident. You sabotaged a plane. You beat me every day for 3 years. And you didn't mean to." "Sarah, please. Don't say my name." Her voice was ice. "You don't get to say my name. You don't get to beg. You don't get to pretend you're human." She looked at Derek. "Let him up. Let the courts deal with him." Derek hesitated. "He'll find a way out. He always does." "Maybe. But I want to be different from him. I want to be better." Sarah met his eyes. "Please, Derek. Let the law handle this." Slowly, Derek nodded. "Atlas, release." The dog stepped back, still growling, still ready. Richard collapsed against the stairs, bleeding, broken, finished. Sirens wailed in the distance. Maria's backup finally arriving. "It's over," Sarah whispered. "It's really over." Derek pulled her into his arms. "Yeah, it is." Atlas positioned himself at their feet, still watching Richard with suspicious eyes. The first police car arrived, then another, then a helicopter with a spotlight that illuminated the entire airfield. Agents swarmed the scene, securing Richard, securing the aircraft, taking statements. Maria approached, her face tight with relief. "You're insane, both of you." "Probably," Derek agreed. "He had guards' weapons, an escape plan. And we had Atlas." The dog wagged his tail. Maria shook her head. "Get to the hospital, both of you. Then we have a lot of paperwork to do." She walked away, already barking orders into her radio. Sarah leaned against Derek, exhausted. "What happens now?" "Now we heal. Both of us. Together." He looked at her, this woman who had survived the unsurvivable, who had found courage when she had every reason to give up. Together. The ambulance took them to the hospital. Sarah's injuries were minor bruises from being grabbed, scrapes from the fall. Derek's shoulder needed stitches, but would heal. They were in adjacent beds when Maria arrived with news. "Richard is in custody. Again. This time no bail, no escapes. He's being held in a federal facility under maximum security." And Helen? Singing like a canary. Apparently, when she realized Richard abandoned her to face the charges alone, her loyalty evaporated. "She's giving us everything, names, accounts, details of crimes going back 30 years. Sarah closed her eyes. "So it's really over." "The criminal part, yes. There will be trials, testimony, all of that. But the danger?" Maria smiled. "That's done." She paused at the door. "You know, in my 20 years as a cop, I've never seen anyone stand up to people like the Blakes and win. Not like this. Not completely. I had help. You had courage." Maria nodded to Derek. "You both did. The world needs more of that." She left. Derek reached across the gap between their beds and took Sarah's hand. "How are you feeling?" "Tired, scared, relieved. I don't even know what to feel." "Feel whatever you need to feel. There's no right answer." "What about you?" Derek was quiet for a moment. "For the first time since Fallujah, I don't feel like I'm drowning. I did something right. I saved someone. Maybe that doesn't erase the people I couldn't save, but it matters. Yeah, it matters. Atlas, who had been lying at the foot of Derek's bed, stood and padded over to Sarah. He rested his head on her mattress, dark eyes watching her. "He really does love you," Derek said. "The feeling is mutual." Sarah scratched behind Atlas's ears. "When I was in that penthouse, I used to dream about having a dog. Richard wouldn't allow it, of course. Said they were dirty, noisy beneath us." "Richard is an idiot. Richard is a monster." "Both things can be true." Sarah laughed a real laugh, maybe the first real laugh in years. "Derek." "Yeah. Thank you. For everything. For hearing my scream. For climbing that cliff. For not giving up on me." "I was never going to give up on you. Why, you didn't know me. You had no reason." "I knew enough." He squeezed her hand. "I knew you were worth saving. I knew you deserved better. And I knew that if I walked away, I'd never forgive myself. You barely knew anything about me. I knew you were brave. I saw it on that terrace before Richard even appeared. The way you carried yourself. The way you hid your pain. That takes strength. I didn't feel strong. The strongest people never do." Sarah looked at their joined hands. At this man who had changed everything. What happens when all this is over, when the trials are done and Richard is in prison and there's no more danger? Then we figure out what normal looks like, together. I'm not sure I remember normal. Neither do I. But maybe that's okay. Derek smiled. Maybe we make our own normal. Atlas barked once. "I think he agrees," Sarah said. "He's very opinionated for a dog." "The best ones are." They fell asleep, holding hands. Atlas stretched across both their feet. For the first time in 3 years, Sarah's dreams were peaceful. She didn't dream of Richard. She dreamed of the future. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Sarah testified for 3 days. She sat in her wheelchair before a packed courtroom and told her story, every bruise, every humiliation, every moment of terror she had endured. She spoke clearly, calmly, refusing to break even when Richard's lawyers tried to destroy her credibility. "Mrs. Blake, Ms. Mitchell," Sarah corrected. "I'm not his wife. I was never his wife. I was his prisoner." The jury listened. The world watched. And when the verdict came, there was no surprise. Richard Blake guilty on all counts. 2 counts of first-degree murder, conspiracy, false imprisonment, assault, financial fraud, life in prison, no possibility of parole. Helen Blake, guilty on 47 federal charges. Conspiracy, racketeering, obstruction of justice, accessory to murder. 40 years. She would die behind bars. Sarah sat in the courtroom as the verdicts were read. Derek on one side, Grace on the other, Atlas at her feet. She had expected to feel triumph, victory, justice. Instead, she felt empty. "How do you feel?" Derek asked quietly. "I don't know." Relieved, exhausted. "Like I've been holding my breath for 3 years, and I finally get to exhale." "That sounds about right." She looked at Richard as the marshals led him away. He turned at the last moment, finding her eyes across the courtroom. For 1 second, she saw the old Richard, the monster, the controller, the man who had made her crawl. Then the doors closed, and he was gone. Forever. "It's really over," Grace said, squeezing Sarah's shoulder. "You did it, honey. You survived." "We survived," Sarah corrected. "All of us." Maria Santos approached her badge gleaming. "Ms. Mitchell, I wanted to personally thank you. Your testimony was crucial. Without you, we might never have brought them down." "Without you, I wouldn't have survived to testify," Maria smiled. "I'm just glad I finally got to nail the bastard. 20 years I've been waiting for this." She glanced at Derek. "Take care of her, Harrison." I plan to. Maria nodded and walked away, already on her phone, already moving to the next case. Sarah looked at Derek. What now? Now we go home. I don't have a home. Yes, you do. He crouched beside her wheelchair, taking her hands. My grandmother's beach house. It's not much, but it's safe. It's warm. And there's plenty of room for you, me, and Atlas. Atlas wagged his tail at the mention of his name. You're asking me to move in with you. I'm asking you to stay. For as long as you want. Forever, if you'll have me. Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. Derek, I'm broken. I'm damaged. I might never walk again. I have nightmares and panic attacks and I have PTSD and survivor's guilt and a dog who judges everyone I meet. Derek smiled. We're both broken, Sarah, but maybe that's okay. Maybe we can be broken together. She laughed through her tears. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. It wasn't a proposal. It was an invitation. He paused. The proposal comes later, when you're ready. And if I'm never ready, then I'll wait. Sarah looked at him, this man who had saved her life, who had fought for her, who had never once asked for anything in return. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll stay. I'll try. I'll see what happens. Derek's face broke into a smile. Genuine, unguarded, beautiful. That's all I ask. He kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Atlas barked approval. Grace dabbed at her eyes. Well, it's about time. Let's go home. 3 months later, everything had changed. Sarah woke to the sound of waves just as she had that first morning at Grace's beach house. But now, instead of confusion and fear, she felt peace. Derek's arm was around her waist. Atlas was sprawled at the foot of the bed. Sunlight streamed through the windows. She was home. Morning. Derek's voice was sleepy warm. Morning. How did you sleep? No nightmares. That's 3 nights in a row. I know. She turned to face him. The therapist says I'm making progress. The therapist is right. Derek had been seeing someone too. A VA counselor who specialized in combat trauma. They went together sometimes, had sessions side by side, shared their broken pieces. It was helping, both of them. I have therapy at 11, Sarah said. But after that, I want to try walking. Derek went still. Sarah, I know, the doctor said there's a chance, but they can't promise anything. The nerve damage might be permanent. I might never. Sarah. She stopped. If you want to try walking, we try walking, together, for as long as it takes. She felt tears again, but these were different. These were hope. The paralysis might be partly psychological. That's what Dr. Chen said. The trauma, the constant fear, my body shut down. But with therapy, with time, anything is possible. She kissed him. I love you, Derek Harrison. I love you too, Sarah Mitchell. Atlas jumped up and inserted himself between them, demanding attention. And we love you too, you ridiculous dog. Derek laughed, rubbing the Malinois' ears. The morning passed in comfortable routine. Breakfast together, Grace joining them, fussing over whether everyone was eating enough. Coffee on the deck, watching the ocean. Small moments that felt enormous after 3 years of captivity. At 10:30, they drove to the rehabilitation center. Dr. Chen was waiting, a small, intense woman with kind eyes and infinite patience. Sarah, Derek, ready. As I'll ever be. The parallel bars were terrifying and familiar. Sarah had spent months looking at them, dreaming of the day she might use them. Today was that day. Derek helped her transfer from the wheelchair. Her legs, thin, atrophied, useless for 3 years, hung beneath her. Okay. Dr. Chen positioned herself at the end of the bars. We're going to take this very slowly. Just hold the bars, feel your weight. That's all for today." Sarah gripped the bars. Her arms trembled, but they held. "Good. Now when you're ready, I want you to try to engage your core. Imagine standing up even if your body doesn't cooperate." Sarah closed her eyes. She thought about the woman she used to be, the Olympic gymnast who flew, the girl who trusted her body completely. She thought about the balance beam, the dismount, the moment of perfect suspension in the air. She imagined standing, and something happened. Her left leg twitched. "Did you feel that?" Dr. Chen's voice was sharp with excitement. "Yes." Sarah's eyes flew open. "Yes, I felt it." "Try again." Sarah concentrated, imagined, willed her body to respond. Her left leg moved, just slightly, just a fraction, but it moved. "Oh my God." Derek's voice was barely a whisper. "Sarah." She tried again. This time her right leg responded too. Not movement, not really, but something. A flutter, a spark. Proof that the connection wasn't completely severed. Proof that there was hope. "This is excellent," Dr. Chen said, professional excitement breaking through. "The nerve regeneration is happening. It's slow, but it's real. With intensive therapy, targeted exercises, I could walk again. I can't promise that, but I can promise that we'll try. And based on what I just saw..." Dr. Chen smiled. "I'm optimistic." Sarah started crying. Derek was at her side in an instant, holding her, supporting her. "You did it," he said. "You're fighting back." "We're fighting back." Atlas, who had been watching from the corner, padded over and rested his head on Sarah's knee. "Even he knows," Derek said. "He always knows." The rehabilitation was brutal, hours every day. Exercises that left Sarah exhausted and aching. Progress that was measured in millimeters, in muscle twitches, in tiny victories that felt enormous. But she kept going. Derek was there for every session. Grace made nutritious meals and forced her to eat them. Atlas provided constant companionship, seeming to understand that his presence gave her strength. And slowly, impossibly, Sarah's body began to respond. 6 months after the trial, she took her first step. It was barely a step, a shuffle really supported entirely by the parallel bars, her arms doing most of the work. But her feet moved. Her legs held weight. She stood. For the first time in nearly 4 years, Sarah Mitchell stood on her own 2 feet. Derek was there to catch her when she collapsed, laughing and crying at the same time. "I did it. I actually did it." "I knew you would." "Liar. You were terrified." "I was terrified you'd hurt yourself pushing too hard. I was never terrified you'd fail." He held her close. "You don't know how to fail." Dr. Chen was beaming. "This is remarkable progress. At this rate, we could have you walking with a walker within a few months, maybe even independently within a year." "A year." "It's a long road, but you've already come further than most people thought possible." Sarah looked at Derek, at Atlas, at the future she was building, one painful step at a time. "Then let's keep going." The news coverage had been relentless in those first weeks after the trial. Sarah Mitchell, survivor. Derek Harrison, hero. The dramatic takedown of the Blake criminal empire. But eventually the cameras moved on. New stories demanded attention. Sarah became yesterday's news. She preferred it that way. 8 months after the trial, she made a decision. "I want to help other women." They were sitting on the deck watching the sunset. Grace was inside cooking dinner. Atlas dozed at their feet. "What do you mean?" Derek asked. "Women like me. Trapped in abusive relationships. Isolated, controlled, convinced they have no way out." Sarah's voice was steady. "I want to create something. A foundation. A safe house. Whatever it takes." "That's a big undertaking." "I have resources now." The Blake fortune seized by the government, redistributed to victims, had included substantial restitution for Sarah. Blood money, but she could make it clean. "And I have experience. I know what it's like to feel trapped. I know what it takes to escape." Derek was quiet for a moment. "You'd be amazing at that." "You think so?" "I know so." He took her hand. "You survived something that would have destroyed most people. You fought back. You won. If anyone can help other women do the same, it's you." Sarah felt something settle in her chest. Purpose, direction. "I want to call it wings." "Wings?" "Because I used to fly. And even when I thought I'd never fly again, I found a way." She looked at him. "Everyone deserves wings, Derek. Even the ones who've forgotten how to use them." He smiled. "Wings. I like it." The foundation launched 9 months after the trial. Wings Hope for Survivors of Domestic Violence. The press covered it, of course. Sarah's story was still compelling, still drew attention, but she used that attention purposefully, directing it toward the cause rather than herself. The first safe house opened in Carmel, close enough to the beach house that Sarah could be involved daily. 3 bedrooms. Security system. A full-time counselor. Room for women and children fleeing danger. The first resident arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Her name was Jennifer. She was 32 with 2 children under 10, and bruises she tried to hide with makeup. Her husband was a lawyer, respected, connected, dangerous. "I don't know if I can do this," Jennifer whispered. "He'll find me. He always finds me." Sarah took her hands. "I said the same thing once. I believed it completely. But I was wrong, and so are you. How do you know? Because I'm still here, because I survived, and because you're not alone anymore." Jennifer looked at her, at this woman in a wheelchair who had survived the unsurvivable. "You really think I can escape? I know you can. It won't be easy. It will be the hardest thing you've ever done. But on the other side of this, there's a life waiting for you. A real life. One where you get to choose who you are and what you want." Jennifer started crying. Sarah held her while she sobbed. "Welcome to Wings," she said softly. "You're safe here." 1 year after the trial, Sarah walked across a room. No bars, no walker. Just her own 2 feet carrying her from one side of the physical therapy room to the other. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't fast. Each step was carefully calculated, her balance precarious, her rebuilt muscles screaming with effort. But she walked. Derek stood at the end of the room, arms open, ready to catch her if she fell. She didn't fall. She reached him and collapsed into his embrace, laughing and crying and shaking with exhaustion. "You did it. We did it." Atlas circled them, barking joyously. Dr. Chen was taking notes, but her eyes were bright. "Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. I've never seen recovery like this." "I had good motivation." Sarah looked at Derek, her protector, her partner, her home. The best motivation. That night, they celebrated at the beach house. Grace made Sarah's favorite dinner. Maria Santos stopped by with champagne. Even Dr. Chen made an appearance. "To Sarah," Derek said, raising his glass, "who taught me that healing is possible, for all of us." "To Derek," Sarah replied, "who taught me that some people are worth trusting." "To Atlas," Grace added, "who is clearly the real hero here." The dog wagged his tail. They drank, they laughed, they told stories. And later, when the guests had gone and the house was quiet, Derek led Sarah to the deck. The ocean stretched before them, silver in the moonlight. The waves whispered against the shore. "I have something to ask you," Derek said. "If it's about the dishes, Grace already did them." "It's not about the dishes." He took her hands. "Sarah, when I found you, I was broken. I'd lost my teammates, my purpose, my will to keep going. I came here to hide, to give up." "Derek, let me finish." His eyes met hers. "You saved me. Not just by giving me something to fight for, but by showing me what real courage looks like. You faced your demons. You rebuilt your life. You turned your pain into purpose." He reached into his pocket. I'm not good at speeches. I'm not good at feelings. But I'm good at knowing what matters. He opened a small box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, perfect. Marry me, Sarah. Not because I saved you or you saved me, but because we're better together than we ever were apart. Sarah looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the life they'd built from the ashes of their broken pasts. Yes. Derek's face broke into a smile. Yeah. Yeah. She was crying again, but these were the best tears she'd ever cried. Yes, I'll marry you, Derek Harrison. He slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her under the stars. Atlas barked his approval. The wedding was small, intimate, perfect. They held it on the beach, just steps from Grace's house. Maria Santos came. Dr. Chen, the staff from Wings, the women they'd helped standing as witnesses to love that had grown from trauma. Sarah walked down the aisle on her own 2 feet. Not gracefully, not easily, but she walked each step of victory over the man who had told her she was worthless, useless, broken beyond repair. She wore a simple white dress, no veil, no train, just her exactly as she was, scarred, but strong, damaged, but determined. Derek waited at the altar, Atlas sitting proudly at his side. You look beautiful, Derek whispered as she reached him. I look like someone who just walked 30 feet on legs that weren't supposed to work. Like I said, beautiful. Grace officiated, ordained online specifically for this purpose. We are gathered here today to witness the union of 2 people who found each other in the darkest possible circumstances and built something beautiful from the wreckage. She looked at Derek. Do you take Sarah to be your wife, to love her, support her, and stand beside her through whatever challenges may come? I do. She looked at Sarah. Do you take Derek to be your husband, to love him, trust him, and build a life together? I do. Then by the power vested in me by the internet and the state of California, I pronounce you husband and wife. Grace smiled. You may kiss the bride. They kissed while the small crowd cheered and Atlas barked. Sarah had been married before, to a monster, in a ceremony that was all show and no substance. This was different. This was real. 2 years later, Wings had expanded to 6 safe houses across California. Sarah served as executive director, working from a specially equipped office that accommodated her wheelchair. She could walk now short distances with effort, but the chair was still her primary mode of transportation. She didn't mind. The chair was part of her story, not the end of it. Derek worked alongside her heading security operations. His military background was invaluable, his protective instincts perfectly suited to keeping vulnerable women safe. Atlas, now officially certified as a therapy dog, spent his days at the safe houses, providing comfort to women and children who desperately needed it. On the anniversary of her escape, Sarah gave a speech. She stood at a podium, actually stood legs trembling, but holding and faced an audience of survivors, supporters, and media. 3 years ago today, I crawled across a marble floor, while a man I thought loved me watched and laughed. The room was silent. I had lost everything: my career, my mobility, my parents, my identity. I believed I was broken beyond repair. I believed I deserved what was happening to me. I believed there was no way out. She paused. I was wrong about all of it. She told her story. Not the sanitized version, not the inspirational edited highlights. The truth. All of it. The ugliness and the pain and the moments when she wanted to give up. And then she told them about Derek. About Atlas. About the climb back to life. If you are in a dark place right now, if you are trapped, if you are scared, if you believe there is no hope, I am here to tell you there is. There always is. You are stronger than you know. You are worth saving. And you are not alone. She looked at Derek standing at the back of the room. I was saved by a stranger who heard my scream and refused to walk away. By a dog who sensed my fear and stayed by my side. By people who believed me when I told the truth and fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. She stood taller. Today, I'm not a victim. I'm not a survivor. I'm a warrior. And so are you. Every single one of you who has escaped abuse, who has rebuilt your life, who has found the courage to keep going, you are warriors. She smiled. And warriors don't stay down. We rise. We fight. We fly. The applause was thunderous. That night, Sarah and Derek sat on the deck of their home. The beach house had become a real home, now expanded, renovated, filled with love and laughter and the constant presence of Atlas. "Hell of a speech," Derek said. "I meant every word." "I know. That's what made it powerful." Sarah looked at the stars, at the ocean, at the life she had built from nothing. "Do you ever think about how it started that night at the gala?" "Every day. I was so broken. So scared. I couldn't imagine surviving another day. And now," Sarah smiled, "now I can't imagine ever giving up." Derek took her hand. "I love you, Sarah Harrison." "I love you too." She leaned against him. "Thank you for saving me." "You saved yourself. I just provided backup." Atlas lifted his head and rested it on Sarah's knee. "And he provided moral support," Derek added. Sarah laughed. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the waves crash against the shore, listening to the eternal rhythm of the ocean. 3 years ago, she had been a prisoner in a gilded cage. Now she was free, free to walk, free to love, free to help others find their own freedom. She had been broken, but broken things could be rebuilt. Damaged things could be healed. And lost things, even wings that had been clipped and forgotten, could be found again. Sarah Mitchell Harrison had learned to fly, and she would never stop flying again. If this story of courage and redemption touched your heart, please write Amen in the comments below, so we know our message has reached you. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their own inner strength. And remember, you are not broken. You are not worthless. You are not alone. You are a survivor, and your story is just beginning. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. Help is available, hope is real, and you deserve to be free. The end.